Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It's Wednesday, June the 29th, 2022. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Skype. It's Tim. He's joining me. Tim, you all know Tim. You know him, you love him, you ask for him. When he's not here acting crazy, you all miss him, ask where he's at. But luckily for you, he's here tonight.
Great thing.
He's feeling a little calm.
Great thing.
Say something for me there, Tim. I'm losing your audio just a little bit.
Waka Flame. Tell me.
Waka
Cliff, what is
Flocka
your
Flame.
name?
I remember Waka Flocka Flame was in the news several years ago because he was the first guy out there hiring a professional blunt roller. I think Snoop Dogg and several other rappers have him now. I think Snoop Dogg's guy gets to hang out with Snoop all the time, and he just rolls blunts full time and is part of Snoop's crew and makes like $60K a year. So it's a pretty good gig if you can get it.
Sounds right.
Yeah, I think Waka.
Right. So I'll be honest with you. I don't even know how to roll a joint.
Well,
I mean,
I think there's lots of people who would just hang out with Waka Flocka Flame and Snoop Dogg just to be able to do that, and then that you get paid, and then you get to say you're rolling Snoop's blunt. That makes you a pretty high profile guy.
Oh, yeah, that's a clout dream job for me.
Yeah. Well, how's it going, Tim? Anything exciting happen to you or locally that you can think of in between now and last time we talked?
Let me check this audio real quick to make sure you're
okay. If you're just joining us, be sure and like the video and share this thing around to people that you think might like to join us. We like to do a live show so that you can participate in it. We want to hear what you're thinking about these topics, and we always try to look at these topics from a nuanced perspective, because it's always more than just black and white and left and right. There's always a gray area or a middle ground. And there's lies coming from both sides, and we like to look down, even if we can't get to the truth of the matter, we like to see it from both perspectives. And sometimes we're going to think one thing, and sometimes we're going to think another, and you will too, and that's all right. And this is a place where we can get together and let our hair down, as it were, kick off our shoes, find a nice spot on the table to sit your feet up, and pour yourself a drink, roll yourself a cigar, have a smoke, whatever it is you do to relax and enjoy yourself. Do that with us, and let's have a conversation just like we're, hanging around the bar or whatever it was people used to do. Somebody commented on this video, and Tim, you said the same thing, or it wasn't this video, it was one of our videos. They chatted in it. You mentioned, what are we doing? We're sitting around. This is the one that Yeti was on. You said we're a group of men sitting together talking to cameras or to each other in front of cameras. What are we doing? And someone who was viewing the stream also concurred with that and said, yeah, what are we doing? And I said, well, it's a little, it's Wednesday night, but this is kind of the replacement for television. I called my cable company, and they usually make it cheaper to have cable if you want high-speed internet. So I called them, and this time it wasn't cheaper, so I canceled it and went straight to the streaming services. They give you a free box for streaming, which is all most of us do anyway. Most of us don't actually use the cable channels. So
I've actually found one of the many deaths of cable TV, because cable TV I thought would kind of go by, but I think it's going to adapt. Have you ever looked on your I don't know what you got? I think mine's a Roku TV, like a LGN or something like that.
Sean says cut the cable. He says he's outside doing yard work and listening on the earbuds. Yeah, that's what I did, Sean. I only kept it before because they made it cheaper to get good high-speed internet if you got the cable than if you just got the internet by itself, but now they've not done that. So but anyway, we're replacing television.
He's mentioning Roku. There's all kinds of crazy stuff on Roku that's
yeah, we're actually in the works with the King Network to get on there. Sorry to cut you off, Tim.
Oh, no, it's fine. I actually went into a giant pack. When I don't even know what it is when you turn the TV on. It's like in between all the apps and stuff. If you just hit one button, it goes to like this big list of free channels, thousands of them. And that TV.
Right. Right. But this noise for the dogs. Oh, we can't hear Tim. Oh, you're turned all the
So
way
now
down
we've
on
been
this one.
creating
Sorry, man.
content.
Yeah, I
Could be.
turned you all the way down on Skype Cam 2 and didn't realize it. I hope you can. I think they can hear you on Skype Cam 1. Let me make sure. Yeah, you're
Jimmy Brick, it was gone, so maybe something happened. I don't know.
okay. Thanks, guys.
Stop
Appreciate
me
that.
from wherever. Appreciate y'all for telling us. Don't make no mistake. I'll just sit here and done this and listen to my head roar anyway. Um, yeah, but my whole point was there's just no lack of content. There's so many. We've been creating content like mad for about I don't know how long time. So that we're all going back and looking at it like in retrospectively now. But now people like look at us, two Joe Blows in Carter County making content, you know. So and there's so many people doing it. There's just no lack of content out there. So I kind of think the big corporations are a little bit screwed in
Yeah,
that department unless they just really crank up the
that,
tricks, because the only way you can go is up with production
that's what I'm
value.
saying. I mean, people didn't hang out with one another. I mean, at least older people. I guess younger people hang out on most nights, but for the most part, people didn't go out and do physical activities together for the past many years, except for a couple nights a week. So with the television and radio, it was kind of when that came along, people started sitting around together, at home on the nights that it didn't go anywhere, but they still went out and did things, a couple nights a week or something like that. But uh, it's not really that common, I don't guess, for at least people for our age to be out every night doing something socially. So I think it's the way we can do something social and have like I said, new media. It's a replacement for television. What we're doing, of course, we're not on the level of replacing television, I don't think, but we're something different that I think people want, which is a conversation and a place to hang out and somewhere to talk about ideas that you can't necessarily get into in public because misinformed people or people who watch mainstream media and believe everything they read will be quick to shoot you down and even in some cases um, it can harm your social status to even get into something like Wilbur was talking about when he was a kid and he was the Bigfoot kid, and there's a lot of stuff like that, some of these topics, but I tend to get into them anyway in public, or in
I guess I was never afraid of being labeled like the Bigfoot kid or anything like that. I really always, I guess I never projected like leaned into it seriously because I was such a big church kid. No one would really think that I believed in anything super crazy, that I was really into weird stuff. I'm trying to think of something, but I remember early 90s, late 80s. I'm trying to really remember. Oh, okay. Yeah. My thought with that was that I could really believe that he would be the Bigfoot kid because I remember a girl that kind of like got chastised for about a month probably by the local girls because they found out like she had tarot
mm-hmm.
cards, you know what I'm saying? Had like a Ouija board. Of course, this was probably 94, something like that. That was like, because I remember she also had a Nirvana album at the time, so it had to be early 90s. But I was saying, like, I guess when we start talking, sometimes I forget about what year it was and how, I guess you don't think back to how things were
Yeah,
back then. You always think of the now,
it's changed
you
a
know,
lot even over the
because
last
you were
5
really
years.
back too. Because then I could sit here and laugh about people judging a girl because she had some, uh, some goofy looking tarot cards and stuff like that. But if I go back in time, man, I was probably pretty stupid back then too. So
I
I shouldn't
think
be
we
so
all were.
arrogant.
Think we all were. Well, listen, let's get into a couple of news stories tonight. I'm not going to keep you up too late because it's Wednesday night, and a lot of us have to work in the morning. I know Sean's still doing yard work because he's Pacific time, so he's still got some light out there. But we're going to start with a few local stories here, and we're going to go to WCYB out of Bristol. But this story is about Johnson City Freedom Hall. They're holding a meeting regarding the future of Freedom Hall. The city basically controls the place, so the Johnson City Commission is having several community stakeholders in. They had a meeting with a design firm and decided to do, to get into the master plan for redesigning Freedom Hall and what's it going to look like and what are they going to do with it. Now they've got the ability to sell alcohol at this place now. They did have, I think, up until the 1990s, they had that ability, but now it's back.
Ain't that a little odd though?
What's that?
Um, I mean, I guess I'm thinking of it from more of a just a legal standpoint. I get why Johnson City can do so much with Freedom Hall because it's part of the school. But now we're going to start serving alcohol at the same place the guys play basketball and stuff, you know?
Yeah, if it, I mean, you have to imagine if it's in a high school basketball setting, I don't think they would. But with the
I'm just saying, like, it's the same
yeah,
ground.
you're right.
And I'm not even protesting. I mean, it makes sense. You're already watching, like, bands.
But you're right, it is odd.
I mean, it's just odd that, you know, whenever, of course, then again, when they can't, how many concerts can they really sell beer at? I mean, I guess they would really have to start selling beer because right now all they have is like Casting Crowns and Christian bands and
Well,
stuff.
they said
They really don't have Christian bands there.
I'm sorry, I was mistaken when I said they were selling beer earlier. They weren't. What I was looking at had said that the city wants it to return to being the concert hub like it was between the 70s and the 90s. So it really was. I mean, there was a national act there every week at.
Is this what you was talking about earlier when you brought up Rob Zombie? Or
Yeah,
Zombie?
well, that's what ended Freedom Hall being. Well, it wasn't really what ended. It was one of the nails in the coffin of Freedom Hall being a stop for major tours. It was.
It was definitely the beginning.
It was on the decline already. I read a piece from back then about it, and it wasn't selling tickets like it was before, and national acts were starting to slow down. But really, White Zombie, if for anybody who's not familiar, if you're not from the area, White Zombie famously came through and had a date scheduled at Freedom Hall in Johnson City, and the ironically named Freedom Hall then decided to cancel under the pressure of Christian groups in the area who did not want White Zombie, most of whom I'm sure never saw White Zombie. They just heard from a television evangelist or something that this was, you know, this awful group who was going to, you know, turn all your children to the dark side or whatever. So the outrage happened. Freedom Hall canceled the concert.
If you consider the time period, though, I mean, not saying it wasn't a little bit, you know, batty to what people, you know, from outsiders would see, you know, but at that same point in time, we were coming out like Columbine.
Mm-hmm. No, that was way before that.
And that was it way before Columbine? Okay, well, it was still Panic
Yeah,
and all that stuff. I'm just saying the time period itself, people were really paranoid about artists. White Zombie, did they predate? Went before all those artists suddenly had their lyrics censored at Walmart?
I think they were around before them, but I don't remember that being them being on the list or anything. I first discovered them, speaking of Mike Judge, like we did Sunday, I discovered White Zombie on, and then they actually had a soundtrack called the Beavis and Butthead Experience, and it had, what song was it on that? More Human Than Human by White Zombie was on it. And I think that was the song on it. But anyway, that was something we discovered through Beavis and Butthead was White Zombie. So maybe that's why that was one of the things that they convinced people around here that it was something to be avoided. Was this band was featured on MTV's Beavis and Butthead, because you remember there was a backlash against that among the, you know, conservative and Christian community too.
Yeah. I'm not real sure exactly what the driving force behind White Zombie was. I think a lot of it was reactionary, really. Yeah. I mean, just, you know, plain and simple. But I mean, it really didn't do Freedom Hall any good because, like, they've been playing almost exclusively Christian acts, the Harlem Globetrotters, and just a lot of very. It's all very family stuff, and not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. But if you're complaining about the sales of tickets and stuff going down, and now all of a sudden you're not even allowed to have the big rock bands when they come through, that's really going to bite you in the ass. Yeah. Didn't Avenged Sevenfold play there?
Oh, I don't know. I saw a couple of good shows there, but they were like classic rock shows, you know, back in the 90s. I haven't seen anything there recently.
I've not been there in a very long time. I saw DC Talk there.
REO Speedwagon played recently.
Yeah, well, that's a decent one.
Let's see who was. I saw Skinner a couple times, and whoops, killed you there, Tim. I saw Skinner a couple times, and ZZ Top and Ted Nugent there. Wrestling used to come there every now and then.
Yeah, they come a lot.
Yeah,
I like them too.
And I was
Casting Crowns plays there about every 6 months.
It was always aggravating when you go to a wrestling event at a smaller venue, you know, that wasn't like a Monday Night Raw or something like that, and you know, that whatever happened in the show, if there were big wrestlers on the show, it was just like it was outside the main storyline. So you'd see them the next week on Raw, and nothing that they did in the local show happened, you know. But
Right.
anyway,
Jimmy says in the chat something about, of course, yeah, I guess Jimmy would be the one asked that. I was pretty young back then. I wasn't paying too much attention.
yeah, the PMRC.
Jimmy,
Go ahead.
oh no, I was just going to say Jimmy made a good point, and he was going to
Okay.
read it. Sorry.
The PMRC was headed by Tipper Gore and started in the mid '80s. Yeah, that's right. That ended up in the late '80s, I believe, when they started putting the labels on the music, the parental advisory. And I don't know about you, Tim, but that was always the one I went for if I was interested to see if there was an artist that I hadn't heard about. If you remember the Columbia House magazines they used to send out, where you would pick 10 CDs for $1 or whatever, and then you'd be on the hook to buy so many more over the years. Well, I would always find the new CDs like with the parental advisory, like Slayer. I saw on there. I was like, oh, Slayer. They don't want me to see that. That's one I want to check out. And I found several bands that way. And it's like, who knows if I even like those bands? Maybe I'm just so was rebellious as a teenager, and that that stuck with me. But anyway,
I wasn't actually allowed to have. None of us were allowed to have anything that wasn't Christian in the house. So, none of the stuff I owned would have had a label on it anyway. So, in high school, we really started wearing out Napster and Kazaa, though. So, no labels on those.
I can remember. I think I was in 6th grade. A friend gave me a copy of Two Shorts, tape cocktails, and then I had a couple of other like dirty rap tapes. I don't even remember what they were. Like maybe Two Live Crew or something like that. But I didn't let my mom hear that stuff.
Yeah, there was some CDs I started buying that I just didn't let them know I had, which is really weird to even think about having to hide. Well, I guess not. That's been pretty common for kids to be hiding stuff from their parents when they're like 14 or 15 for a very long time.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with the openness, the parents are probably like, what'd you steal today? As long as you tell me the truth, you're not in trouble.
Yeah, they wouldn't even make you take it back now.
Yeah. If you make it take it back, you'll be traumatizing.
That's the all I do, huh? All right, let's go on to the next one. We got several new laws taking effect July 1st, impacting Tennessee schools, the public schools anyway. The Tennessee Republican lawmakers made a push to approve a variety of laws they say will better schools. One measure addresses staffing challenges, but it doesn't really necessarily say how they'll do that other than to remove barriers for retired members of the Teachers Consolidated Retirement System without them losing or having their benefits suspended. It's probably where they had so many teachers retired in the whole COVID thing over the last couple of years. Maybe a lot of them took early retirement or retired right at the time that they were, supposed to, and maybe would have hung on a little bit longer. But I heard from several teachers that were older at some of my kids' schools that, well, it seems like a good time to get out now. I can retire now, so I think I'm going to. So I think they're trying to bring some of those people back because they're running short on people.
Yeah, staffing would be affecting every industry. But
we've also got another thing that caught my attention was that they were going to go to a 10-point grading scale where A starts at 90% instead of 93%, which, I mean, it kind of makes sense because that's really the standard in college, but at the same time, it kind of goes right with what Carter County did here recently. They went to a mean or a median grade score. So basically, instead of having all your grades averaged together, they went to, okay, we're going to line up all your grades from lowest to highest. And so and whatever is in the middle, that's your score. So if you got a 0, 0, 0, 0, 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, you could get 100 for your grade. And basically it was, the idea was if a kid learns, comes in and has a slow start in the class, we don't want to penalize them for that if they learn throughout the end of the class. But then I thought, well, that sounds like it makes sense.
Great the rest of the year because they did so poorly at
the end. You don't want to fail them because they went off to a rough start. I said, okay, I can see that. But then it could also be used like this class is easy at the beginning, so you start off with hundreds, and then by the end of it, you get to a failing grade, and then you could also not get it for that. And I think the average is really a pretty fair way to do it. So it just seems like they are trying to make up for poor performance following their poor handling of the COVID pandemic And, going to virtual teaching for so long, and even when they went back to school, I went down to the school board and talked about this, like not only the mask issue, but also they had them on virtual school even while they were in school after they had gone back to school. And I went to the board and I was like, a year ago we all agreed that too much screen time is a bad thing for these kids, even if they're learning, even for educational purposes. We all agreed that. And now we're sitting here cutting off their oxygen, sitting them in, not able to actually talk to one another, and they're doing everything on a screen while they're at school. This is not going to be good for them. And lo and behold, now they're trying to find ways to rig the scores so that the students look like they're doing better than they actually are. So I think this is more of that. Even though it does make sense to go on a 10-point scale, it really does. That seems to be, the standard now. But it just seems like another thing in line to make it look like kids are learning more than they actually are. To avoid accountability, essentially. And that's part of, why I would like to see things like school choice, where the public schools aren't the only game in town. If you have the money follow the students, and the school fails the students, then the money can go to somewhere else where the students can hope for a better outcome. And if that fails, then you can go somewhere else too, and you'll have to compete to get that money. You'll have to do well. But let's go to the next story here. New skate park opens in Kingsport. That's pretty sweet. You were a skateboarder, weren't you? Or are you?
No, I haven't skateboarded in a really, really long time. If I fell off a skateboard now, man, it'd sound like a bag of pretzels hitting the ground. I'd shatter.
Well,
I wouldn't have called myself a skater. I would have called myself a skater boy.
you had a
What I mean?
skateboard.
Like the kid that can do it. I had a bunch of skateboards. I broke them. I never had access to like vert ramps or anything like that though. So like I could do some stuff with like some curbs and railings and stuff like that. But I never had the opportunity to have swimming pools and vert ramps. The only time we ever had opportunity to swimming pools is me and a couple of kids from the parking lot crew. Did you ever hang out at the parking lot in Elizabeth?
I don't think the Ingles parking lot, or
Well, we moved several places.
Okay.
This probably be confusing to outsiders that find this. We're dirt poor and we have to hang out in parking lots because everybody lived in trailers and 2-bedroom apartments. So if you wanted to hang out with anybody that wasn't your family, you had to hang out in parking lots, even in the winter. We went from Ingles. We went to some of the car washes, and then we settled on Elizabeth and High School's parking lot for a while. Several different groups, like clusters of cars here and there, clicked up. But some of us more mischievous kids realized that Elizabeth was pretty easy to get into. So we would just start going in there, and they would drain the pools at the end of, I don't know if it was fall or whatever. Or at least one year we found out the pools were drained. That's the only chance we actually had to use the pools. we ended up getting kicked out. It wasn't even us. I didn't even get in trouble. None of us that were in there using the pools got in trouble. People ended up getting in trouble were the basketball kids. Because I guess they were like, we're not going to let the poor kids out cool us. They broke into the school, so we're going to break in too. And they turned all the gymnasium lights on, and when they were playing ball. But to their credit, they did that for like probably almost a week straight. Until finally the janitor came by and was like, "Oh, what's all these lights on? I mean, it's right there in the middle of town. People have to known. The lights should not have been on."
Well, I remember watching that Gleaming the Cube with Christian Slater, I think is who was in it. It was a skateboarding movie. I saw it when I was, pretty young. I don't know, in elementary school. It always had me fascinated about skateboarding and skating and pool. I didn't know that there was, that place, the eye level that was in Elizabethton, that was in Stony Creek apparently. I didn't know that was where it was at. I probably could have got my mom to take me down there. But
the kids that went, but I never actually got a chance to go.
I didn't know it was right there. I probably could have gone. But I
heard that's a place for, this is what I heard, but then again, I heard it was a place for just mostly for people to sell drugs, but that's probably just what they wanted you to think, because it was where all the mean kids were hanging out.
Maybe.
Skateboarders, they're doing the heroin.
Yeah, well, I know a couple people that used to hang out down there, and they said it was actually a really good skating place, that they had some
I knew Josh Kodak. Do you know him by any chance? Level. But me and him were going to church together at the time. I've not seen him in quite a while.
Yeah, I've not either. But yeah, So the new skate park's opening in Kingsport. Let me get some pictures of it because it actually looks pretty badass.
Pretty decent
Yeah.
size.
All right,
Johnson City's is relatively small, but I've not been up there in a long time to see if they've increased the size of it.
folks, can you give me somebody in the chat? Can you give me a thumbs up or thumbs down on Tim's audio? I'm hearing some scratchiness in my ear. Is that coming through on your end, or is that just me? I think it's to do with my settings here, but I just want to make sure nobody else can hear it.
Down on Tim's audio. I'm hearing some scratch.
Beat me to beat. This is me giving you some sample audio. And then there's a 5-second delay, and I'll just listen for myself. Squall! Let me give you some scratch.
Jimmy says, "Moonshine, glad you took a drink. Reminded me I have some in the fridge. Maybe help knock this run out." Jimmy, I don't know what you're talking about. But that sounds like a good idea for you. If you're dealing with the row. Jimmy says it sounds good here, so I guess we're in good shape. Thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure. Didn't want to try.
It sounds as good as a Scott Calls ever sounded to me. It does sound poopy, but normally does.
Well, here's a little bit of some pictures of the new skate park here. It looks pretty big. You got a couple of you got 2 bowls. You got a 4-stair set. You got up and down rails and 2 quarter pipes. Let's go look at it a little bit here. Got some more photos. That's a pretty sweet looking bowl right there. So if you're in the Kingsport area, now you've got one in Johnson City and Kingsport. So pretty good. Some kids got some cool places to skate. I would have loved to have access to a place like that. Because mostly like you, Tim, I only had access to like a curb or a rail here and there. I could do an ollie, and I never did really learn how to slide, do anything other than ollie onto, and do like a truck slide or a tail slide on.
You ever get the nollie?
Well, I don't even remember what that is.
It's just like when you, instead of, when you kick, you pull the front foot up. It's when like you jump and then you pull.
Oh
the back
no, I
end
never
up
even
first.
tried that.
So it's like a reverse ollie.
Okay,
It's
I can
called
see
an
how that
ollie.
would work though. I never tried that. I barely was able to do like ollie onto something and slide without falling, or to do I could do a kick flip and a heel flip, and that was about it. I couldn't string any other tricks together or anything. Do what?
Did you do kick flip old school, or did you actually do the new
Well,
school slide?
I don't know what that really means, but I would slide my foot, the front edge of my foot down the board as I kicked out to the side. If that,
It's considered new school, like when you do the nollie and you bring your foot up and it brings the board with, that pulls it up. By the way, we just put sandpaper on there to get more grip. The old school way was to just do a giant ass jump or giant ass nollie and then kick it, like actually kick the board down, which is way more dangerous because you always kick it down and like nut
credit
yourself
card yourself or whatever.
Or the old kick flip, they could go up and you'd slap it with your foot until people figured out you could just like back in the old day, like I think it was like surfers that just needed. I'm not going to say I'm going to go over the history of skateboarding as a Tennessee person, but I mean, like, there's an evolution to all those sports and stuff. So you got to think someone was spinning the board a different way before somebody figured out they could just take it, and do it a way that wasn't.
I don't know. I just watched other people do it and started trying to do it the way they did it. So I mean, it was kind of intuitive, really, and the same with the heel. But last time I skated was when we were playing with Corned Beef and the Pillbillies. We were playing Popcorn Sutton Moonshine Festival, and Dustin and I and our drummer Josh, we were sitting out with that what's his name, JD Raider from the Moonshiner Show, I think is his name. He's an old guy in overalls and a beard. His name was JD. But he was a cool old guy, and we sat around and we passed around his Dasani bottle, and Dustin brought out his skateboard, and I got convinced to get on it, and I could skate without. Yeah, he had it with him in his car. I could skate a little bit and stay on the board as long as I didn't try to do anything. I could only ollie while standing still, and I could only land on the board probably about, I don't know, 3 out of 10 times I actually land on it. So if you don't,
did you decide to skateboard because you were at a festival, or did you decide to skateboard after? You know what I'm saying?
We had been sitting around with JD there passing his Dasani bottle around, and Dustin got out the skateboard. There was like an asphalt path around the campground there, and so we skated on the asphalt path. It was pretty wide, so you had room to, it was fairly smooth.
I would consider like skateboarding if I have. I would not try any of those tricks.
Oh, I
right
didn't
there,
even
like
want to
that.
try
Like,
anything
I just
challenging.
yeah. I didn't maybe just kind of coast around, but there's no way I wouldn't even like try
No.
to jump or anything. I'd be too afraid of
Yeah, no, I
the
didn't
Dr.
even
Bill.
try to do anything. I didn't even try to ollie while I was moving, just while I was standing still. All right.
I don't know if I did it in the grass.
If you did what?
So I don't even know if I would do an
Hmm.
ollie in the grass. Like I think I would
Hmm.
just not even risk it. Or twisting my leg and I'd be like, oh great, let's take it home for a week. Just
Well, here
not
we got from WJHL. We got former Tennessee teacher indicted on child pornography charges. We've had several of these over the last few months, haven't we? We've mentioned on the show. This one's
Where's
from
this one from?
Cookeville, so not far down the road. A former Putnam County indicted
Yeah.
after detectives say they found child pornography as well as evidence of distribution on a computer at his Cumberland home. Now, here's the thing, Michael J. Phillips. Well, they don't show. I was going to show his face, but they're not showing it on here. But anyway, they charged him because they said they had a cyber tip come through that some illegal material had been downloaded in the area, and they used that to basically get a warrant and track it to his home and go get him. But I just wonder who they don't mention who the cyber tip came from. Was it a law enforcement agency? Was it, an internet service provider? It'd be interesting to know that.
Cyber tip would be an email, but I just wonder, like, I don't know if this is what my only theory, unless it was like a family member.
Well,
just
no,
somebody
because
was in
they
the
said it
know.
came from because they had noticed that file, which matched the illegal material, had been downloaded to somewhere in the area, and then they got the warrant and found it came to that computer. So it makes me think that it's somebody behind the scenes. That's what I'm saying. Who is telling them this? Who is it? An agency that's monitoring for this? It says, according to the Office of District Attorney General Brian C. Dunaway, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they received a cyber tip that photographic files containing suspected child pornography may have been uploaded in the jurisdiction. And then
honeypotted.
well, that may have been it too, yeah. But then they found the
You know what I mean?
actual files on his computer, so it wasn't just that he tried to do it; he actually had it. And I think they must have a digital fingerprint on those files to where they are able to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't make sense that they would just like somebody watch. Like the whole setup doesn't make sense. What makes more sense to me would be that if dudes on YouTube are busting preds,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying, using chat logs and stuff, and they use a decoy, right? So just because it's illegal for the citizens to have child pornography does not mean the Fed does not own it. And what if they just
Yeah,
have
that's true. Could be.
honeypots? You know what I'm saying? Like, it was downloaded because it was shared
yeah.
from their server, and they can track you right
Could
from
be.
there. Just sounds like an easy gimmick, like to really get people. Because a lot of the people, like even with the Jared dude from Subway, if you listen to a lot of these people when they get caught with the images, they're a part of some kind of sharing group. Like that just blows my mind that there's just people do that. Like I know Discord is allegedly really bad for people doing lascivious behavior, but like I'm trying to remember if it was what they call the zoophile busts, like where people just get so content discussing like really lewd stuff because everybody else in the Discord is doing it, and all of a sudden one day one FBI agent gets in there and goes, "Oh look, I've got just a ledger of all these people that have now admitted to abusing animals and stuff like that," and they've busted several, 2 or 3 that I know of, probably more Discord servers that have people just outright confessing to doing these crimes.
Whether they did or did not, that doesn't matter.
Well, now at least they have a name and an IP address and stuff that they can connect all that stuff to. There was a guy named Kira.
Do you think they were really doing it, or do you think
abusing
you said the way you said?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, people were going on these forums and bragging about all these cruel acts and stuff, and so it led to enough suspicious behavior to where the feds could actually go investigate when it happened. I know the one guy that they had that he had actually put videos of him doing some stuff.
Well, that's definitely enough for probable cause there.
Yeah, but when they got a hold of, when they went and busted him, he had other people that he had been sharing images with from another thing that wasn't Discord related. So through him, they
these
busted 2
people
more
usually
people.
travel in groups. It's like that.
That's what I'm saying.
You seen that
Birds of
movie
the
Doctor
feathers.
Sleep?
I haven't seen it, but I know
It
a little
was
bit about
a Stephen King movie. It was a sequel to The Shining, and it was basically a trope of, they were supposed to be ancient beings, I guess, that fed on the shine of powerful children, and they would track them down and steal it from them. But it's kind of like that, you know. The people that do those things, they tend to go together with other people that do those things because they like to talk about it. They like to, you know, just like criminals tend to congregate towards people who are involved in the same kind of activity that they are. To
Well, hell, even just let's use something that's not criminal.
yeah,
It's music. Just because like you get along with people, you'll hang out with people just because they're a musician, because you get the chance to talk about it and play it and jam with them. And so imagine how small your sphere of friends would be if the only thing you have in
Yeah.
common is illegal. You know, like that's why like it's really hard to find people that are on the really hard drugs that aren't also hanging out with people that are on hard drugs, because it becomes not only their friend circle, it's like
yeah,
their supply chain.
nobody
from
wants
the
to hang
black
out with
market.
anybody that's on hard drugs unless you're on hard drugs either.
So now imagine how crazy that would be. Now imagine how crazy that would be if your fix was involved in human trafficking. Imagine how small your sphere would be. You know.
Well, let's get on.
Hopefully, hopefully we're not naive, and there's not a lot more people doing it than we think. But I'm sure it's way
Well,
higher
I think
than
we
do
are
think.
naive because I think a lot more of it goes on than we do know. Here's one, another one happening. We talked about in Utah County, Utah. There was the case of Sheriff Mike Smith. Well, it started off with the county attorney there in Utah, David Levitt. He had a press conference saying that the sheriff, Mike Smith, was after him because he was trying to indict him on charges of child trafficking and cannibalism, which caused Mike Smith, the sheriff, he responded with a press conference saying, no, actually, we were seeking the help of the public in identifying. If you remember when we first talked about this story, it was because we saw something where in Utah County, the sheriff put out a bulletin to the press saying if anyone was involved in sexual abuse of children between the 1990s and 2010, please contact us. And that was pretty much all they said. Well, then the attorney came out for the county and said that he believes this is after him because somebody tried to nail him on a child trafficking and cannibalism and murder charge, and that they were trying to scapegoat him, and that was why the sheriff was bringing this up, which then the sheriff responded with a press conference saying that the county attorney had done this intentionally, had this press conference to taint the investigation because we never released any details of what we're investigating. We never mentioned any names. We never mentioned any specific crimes, and we were just looking for victims to come forward, and we did have some victims come forward, but now we think it's going to be have you know, he's had several victims come forward, but now we think we're going to have a harder time with it because you've come out and tainted this, and you know then it's been going on from there with the county attorney trying to get the county commission to remove him. The county investigation, they devoted against investigating the sheriff for this, and then we've got this from I put this video in this tweet in the description of our video because it is about another development in this story where the attorney, David Levitt, the county attorney, had a strategy to adopt a Native American infant, which a video of him was submitted to evidence as part of a 2020 Homeland Security human trafficking investigation. I put the video in here if you guys want to check it out. But basically, it seemed like this guy was trying to basically either cover his tracks by adopting a Native American child, or to actually they claim maybe that they're claiming that he was trying. I want to be careful how I say it because I don't want to accuse him of anything. I'm just saying he is being investigated or was being investigated by Homeland Security related to the adoption of this child. And it's just one more thing because he has been under investigation for a long time. The sheriff is investigating possible satanic ritual and satanic ritual child abuse, murder in this area, and they're looking for people to come forward. And we're going to keep an eye on the story because we were one of the first people that started talking about it. And I've seen several national podcasts pick it up since then, including Tim Pool and Quite Frankly have both talked about it. But actually, if you really want to stay up on it, quite frankly, it's got a lot more resources than we do with Frank and Jim Zell, the Zell brothers, in the Zeller.com, Zellar. They have these guys are boots on the ground kind of investigators who are old school. They figure this stuff out. They worked a lot on the John Benet Ramsey case, and they've got a lot of information on their site if you're interested in that kind of thing. But basically, I'm going on to show you that there's this active case going on in Utah County investigating this stuff. Then we've got R. Kelly, R&B singer, sentenced to 30 years in sex trafficking case. Now, Tim, you were telling me something about his Come to America shtick. What was that?
Well, is it going to hurt for you just to play a little snippet of it, and I'll keep my mouth shut? Because I don't think I could do it justice. But to sum it up, this video is probably 15 years old.
Let's see,
if not more.
I'll tell you in just a second.
Uploaded video might not be the same, but it's an old video.
All right, I got it right
anyway,
here.
While you find it, my whole once we show people the video, you're gonna be like, well, yeah, he has no case. He wasn't hiding his behavior, you know. So go ahead and show it's almost comical once you see his little shtick here, because several of the girls that he had trapped in his house came from this little routine that you're about to show.
Try to get this where make sure you can hear it.
Yeah, they need the volume.
Girl, would you like to come back with Rob to America?
Yeah,
need more volume?
Do you have your passport?
No, you're good. You're good. Sorry.
Did you get your shots? Okay, so we get it. He's inviting young ladies from across the world to come back to America. So tell me about how this.
Did you?
So he was basically was this used as evidence against him because he was?
I don't know if it was used as evidence against him. I just know that several of the girls that were he had a house, and I want to say it was like 15 girls in there, where he would go to these places like the Philippines, and he would put these giant shows on, and then he would announce from stage, "Hey, you got your passports? Are you up to date on your shots? Well, come get on my plane, because there's nothing against a girl from the Philippines visiting America if she has her passport." She just never got to go home. She would go into his sex castle, and a bunch of girls just lived in their house, and they weren't allowed to leave. And even if they wanted to reach, they didn't speak English. They're just these Filipino native girls. Well, native. I mean, you think they have their passports and their shots and stuff like that, but still, consider what it would be like to even be from like a bigger city in the Philippines, and all of a sudden R. Kelly walks up and says, "You want to go to America?" And now you're trapped in this mansion. You are helpless. Speak the language, you don't know the culture. His guards won't let you out of his site. So, but yeah, that's where these girls came from. Is he would just straight out go to these shows and be like, "Hey, you want to come home?"
This says Lizette Martinez was a 17-year-old aspiring singer when she met Kelly at a Florida mall. She was promised mentorship, but quickly ended up as a sex slave. She said Wednesday outside court. So, 30 years he got. He also, if you remember, he married Aaliyah, the R&B singer in the 1990s, when she was like 15, and she had an album out which he wrote and produced called Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, which I always thought was weird because I remember that she was dating R. Kelly at the time, and it turns out he was 27, she was 15, but they faked her ID so he could marry her, I think, when they said she was 18. Yeah. And
can you imagine that? Like it's like pedo records.
There's R. Kelly for you guys, going away for 30 years. Well, let's see how much of it he does. But who else went away this week? We also had Gelane Maxwell. I was going to get into it on the show on Sunday a little bit, but we kind of ran out of time. And that was Gelane Maxwell was put on suicide watch, and that was what I was going to share with you on Sunday. But since then, she's been sentenced, and she actually got 20 years They say she'll probably do 16 and a half, something like that. So, but either way, she'll be an old lady. But at the same time, when you think about the depth, the depravity of what she did, the media is framing it as she supplied girls or procured girls for Epstein, but they're not talking about who else went to Epstein's island and who else they were procuring these girls for. It wasn't just for Epstein, and there was a whole lot more going on with Epstein in New Mexico, the ranch out there. He had like a genetic engineering program going on, and you also saw he had like daycares, and so did the Nixium program that Keith Raniere was running last year. And the media didn't really talk about that much either. They talked about the sexy girls that were working for him, but they had daycare centers, all kinds of crazy stuff going on all over the place, and they appear to be directly connected to child trafficking. Well, you have now Gelane, after she's been convicted and sentenced, or I guess pled guilty. She didn't go to trial. But we've got from the New York Post here, Prince Andrew could be the FBI's target after Gelane Maxwell sentencing, say lawyers. Now they say, if you remember Prince, it says obviously Andrew is the one target they'll be looking into. It's based on reporting from the Mirror after, and many people were wondering why Gelane got such a small short sentence, relatively speaking. If you think about what R. Kelly did, and a lot of people felt that 30 years, unless she gets Arkansided, which, I was going to show you, I'm going to show you something about that here in a minute. Yeah, you're right, Sean. R. Kelly, he sounds like shit on that video. America! It's just, his vibrato was off, so he just started shaking the microphone. But, yeah, it says they usually can't speak English. Maxwell only got 20 years. What a joke. And Sean says, unless you get Arkansided. Yeah, and she was, I've speculated on this podcast before that she's actually the mama. She's the ringleader. She's not procuring them for Epstein. Epstein is working for her. And that's just my speculation, or was working for her. But,
Did you listen to any of the interviews from a lot of those people that were in the physics department, those physicists that were made famous on Rogan's program, to the main people? I mean, they are famous physicists, but JRE kind of exposed them. A lot of people like on the mainstream. And then after it came out that he had really buddied up to a lot of these physicists, and some of them immediately came out. I think it was Steven Pinker. He's not a physicist. He's something else. But he came out immediately and was like, made a statement, was like, look, I went to this guy's island one time. I was invited. I thought he was a fraud from the first time I met him, because I think his friends, the narrative was that he had made his money and
Wall Street and
something like that. Yeah, but he said when he went and talked to him, because Steven Pinker's kind of a genius, he was like, he wanted to talk to him about the stuff that he was involved in. He said that it was really quickly evident to him that this guy only knew the subject on a surface level, like to be able to stumble through conversations was about as much as he knew about it. And I always kind of suspected something was up there. And then he said he never went back, which does check the ledger. But that guy that's also on Rogan's program, what was that guy's name? Lawrence Krauss. He went there like 4 or 5 times. And I'm not sure to this day why people have never given him any shit about it. Because that's a lot of times.
We see people calling out Bill Clinton and Bill Gates a lot for being on the list, and there's a longer list that wasn't actually released. So the FBI has a list, and I saw a report the other day on Twitter that nobody actually. It was like a breaking news, but you never can really believe these things, because sometimes these reporters, they get something and they want to be the first to report it, so they put it out there on Twitter without checking anything, and it turns out to be inaccurate. But there was breaking news yesterday that there was somebody who had either been on scene, or there were reports that the FBI was actively deleting and removing videos and photographs from the scene of the Epstein Island. So we'll see if that comes out, but I couldn't find anything on it today in the news. But they're saying Prince Andrew, if you remember when he got interviewed, I can't remember what interview it was. It was back in 2019. He got sued by Virginia Jeffrey, who he's been photographed with, and he was in an interview asked if if he had ever seen her, and he said no, he didn't remember it. And she said that they danced, and she remembered him being really sweaty. And it's like, well, that would be impossible because of a condition I developed in the Falklands where it is physically impossible for my body to sweat. And everybody was like, what the fuck? Oh, but I've since gotten over that condition. I can now sweat. But yeah, so that was always really suspicious to people. Yeah, I can't remember who it was interviewing, but it was very awkward, and it was obviously was full of shit, and I can't believe he ever did the interview. And then they actually forced him. What is he, the Duke of York? Yeah, he's the Duke of York, and he got fired from his royal duties a couple of years ago too.
So he got fired
Yes,
from his dukedom.
and he ended up settling out of court with with Virginia Jeffrey, in a lawsuit filed in Manhattan that claimed that he sexually abused her when she was 17. Now that doesn't necessarily mean he did it, but everything looks like that he, definitely did something he shouldn't have been doing. He definitely was photographed with her with his arm around her, and so some lawyers are reporting that the FBI is looking at him, and that may be why Gelane got such a low sentence. Who knows? I guess we'll just have to watch and see. But here we got this story from the Babylon Bee. Do what?
She's probably going to get a low. She probably got a low sentence. Well, other than the fact that she's probably not going to do any time, she probably got a low sentence because she's going to.
Well, that's what I was wondering too. Now here we have this because there's nothing come out of the client list. But if they were investigating the client list and actually trying to get the people, you wouldn't see it released, right? Wouldn't you think the same thing, Tim? Wouldn't you think that would be the case?
What, that I want the public to see the client
No,
list?
I mean, obviously we want to see the client list, but wouldn't you think that if they were actively investigating it, that they would not want to release that?
Did they not release it? Because I
No,
thought
the
ledger was
ledger,
leaked.
the flight list has been leaked. But I'm talking about Gelane Maxwell's client list that everybody's talking about that has not been released. So if they are actually investigating who is she and Epstein supplying these children to, then you would think law enforcement would not want to have the list of the suspects released publicly, right?
I mean, do they have proof that they're supplying children beyond the island? Because the public narrative, from what I understand, is that it was sort of an open whorehouse island for people to come and bang whores on the island, maybe even underage. But I didn't hear of a public narrative as far as like any mainstream outlet talking about them supplying.
Well, by supplying
people,
them, I mean traveling to the island in order to partake in this. Now, they wouldn't necessarily always have to be in the island. Sam for the win. Hey there, Sam. Just tuning in. What's all this? Yeah, you missed it. We started talking about R. Kelly's been sentenced to 30 years. We saw Prince Andrew could be the next target for the FBI after Gelane Maxwell's been sentenced for 20 years. So that's where we got in.
To America. Andrew, and how he would serenade them.
God, ladies, don't
Sing
fall for the pretty voice and the pretty face. I'm telling you.
That dang image of like Prince Andrew sitting there with like a cigar and like an open denim jacket, sitting there singing a Morrissey song, trying to get laid. Haven't had a dream in a long time.
Oh, well, hey, look, we got this one here. This one's for you. I think it was Sean that said this. Let me look back here. Yeah, Sean said unless she gets Arkansas. This is from the Babylon Bee. Gelane Maxwell to be killed early on good behavior. Y'all, you can always count on the Babylon Bee for a good headline, and that's kind of why they're always getting removed from Twitter. Or I think it was because they called the Health and Human Services Secretary a man dressed in drag. Rachel Levine. I think that's why they've been removed from Twitter, and they haven't been allowed to come back up unless they remove the tweets, and they won't do it. But yeah, they said Gelane Maxwell, former co-conspirator of sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for a crime, but the judge did express it was likely she would be killed early on good behavior. Miss Maxwell, I hereby sentence you to a devastating 20 years for your crimes, said U.S. District Judge Allison Nathan, but if you maintain good behavior, you'll be suicided in a week. So that's the Babylon Bee.
Somebody will probably buy them out, just like they bought the Onion out because they wouldn't
I don't
stop
know if the
talking about
Babylon Bee
Hillary.
would sell. They're kind of more. I think they have more. What do you call it? I think they're more. Yeah, principled. That's
Principles, they
it.
don't
Yeah.
need the money. Well, see, I'm pretty sure that it was kind of like I can use some. Maybe this is. I hope maybe I shouldn't say this. It's so old now it doesn't matter. The Ford dealership in downtown Elizabethton would not sell for like Grindstaff had been trying to buy them for forever, right? And then he got someone to buy it with his money and didn't tell the Ford dealership that he was one of the partners on it because otherwise they
right.
wouldn't have sold it because they didn't want the place being owned by it. And that's the only reason Grindstaff was able to start getting Fords because he wanted to move into the Fords. What if it was somebody else is what I'm saying? Like you can get somebody to buy stuff
Yeah,
for you.
that's a good point. Yeah, well, that's a lot, Sam. It is. You might have to check out the beginning of the video. We started in some local stuff for a little while, so maybe you didn't miss too much on this stuff. But we're going to move on from that tonight because I don't want to keep it too long. It's 10:56. So another thing that's been in the news today and yesterday, we had. This is from Reuters. Trump wanted to join the Capitol riot, tried to grab the limo steering wheel, aide says. And he saw this Cassidy Hutchins chick. She came into Congress and she testified that she had been told that Trump tried to reach through from the back of the limo and grabbed a Secret Service, assaulted 2 Secret Service officers and tried to grab the steering wheel and said, "I'm going to the Capitol. You know, these people don't want to hurt me. Let's go." But right after that, okay, if you look on the news, that's trending on Twitter, that's trending on Google, that's trending on all your major online news markets. And right after that came out, we saw NBC reporter, very anti-Trump guy, Peter Alexander. He said, "A source close to the Secret Service tells me both Bobby Engel, the lead agent, and the president limousine SUV driver are prepared to testify under oath that neither man was assaulted and that Mr. Trump never lunged for the steering wheel." But that doesn't stop the media from continuing to put that story out there because that sounds like, I mean, I wish Trump was that based and would do something that badass, but I don't think he's.
Standards doesn't that go against his like narrative of stand down and all that stuff? Like what it tells me is like we've been in this cycle now for a while. That's just the more of the same where people because we all know there's fake news, but a lot of people have chosen just I'm going to believe this and because I like this and it's not going to affect anything anyway. So there's a lot of like voluntary like choosing to believe crazy stuff. Because man, I've met some people that have believed stuff and like quoted stuff to me that I'm like, surely to goodness by now you've heard that that's not true, right? Like crazy stuff. I don't even want to like try to bring up because it's just like you know that that's not true. How do you think that that's still real? You know. So I just wonder, like, or not even wonder. I just know there's a whole lot of people out there that see that article, and that's fact. That's in their head. No matter what you show them, no matter what they hear from here on out, they're going to go to their grave believing that Trump busted through the back window of the limousine and was like, "We're going to the Capitol."
Super Trump for the win.
Steering wheel stuff because they believe the ultimate evil like that. Like they need him to be a villain so badly for some reason that they'll believe the craziest stuff about him.
Well, and that goes right back to like this. Even though we have more information, you don't see Reuters retracting the story or updating it. Just like when we had with the whole Trump-Russia conspiracy, and we found out pretty early on that a lot of that stuff was bullshit. Now we know it was all bullshit, and the stories, you know, they didn't go back and correct these things. Jimmy said, "Oh my God, she's such a fool. She made such a fool of herself." His Secret Service said they will testify under oath. It's all a lie. Yeah. So she didn't even say that she observed that. She said that somebody else told her that. I forget the guy's name, started with a P, but that guy said he didn't ever tell her that either. But so a little bit of craziness going on there, but that's just a good example of how. What's that?
Need though, like, ain't that crazy that people need something like that to be true though, or maybe they just need the paper to sell some stories. But it's kind of like the analogy I've used before, where it's like it's not enough for Hitler to have killed half the world. We also need them to have been like really into fecal matter during sex, or like it's not enough for him to have killed half the world. He has to be pooping on Ava Braun's chest in the bedroom. Like we need them to be so effed up. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can't just hate for facts. Like if you really wanted to hate Trump, you could dig up enough. You can hate anybody. if you
Yeah.
dig up enough stuff, especially if
Yeah.
they're in politics. But we want to believe fantasy now because it makes us feel better. The truth doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and I think Trump was one of the worst, well, one of the most obvious cases for a lot of people when when you just see when you see the stories, you're like, oh, I can see Trump doing that, and it makes sense. And if you already want to hate Trump, like you said, it's easy to believe that. And not that there's not any reason to hate Trump. I've got plenty of things that I don't like about Trump, but most of the stories that you see about him that were sensationalized in the media were actually not true or completely, either only part of the story. They leave out important information. So that he was one of the ones who made it the most obvious, and he popularized the term fake news. Obama actually started that term, and everybody acts like Trump made it up. But Trump, was kind of making fun of Obama by starting the whole thing, saying, you know what, you're the fake news, and people can relate to that because when you catch, especially for me, one of the first things that made me realize that they were lying about him was the video where he supposedly mocked the disabled reporter, but a quick video that you can see for just a couple minutes long shows he's been doing this gesture right here to refer to someone, including himself, who has been discombobulated for many, many years. That's a gesture he uses. He didn't just do that for that reporter, but they made it out like, oh, this guy just did it. He knows who this guy is. This reporter who was all the way back in the room, he knows he's got a disability, and that's why he did that. But anyway, that was kind of like, that was one of those moments where you see, well, they're really going after for this guy something that's easily provable that it's not the case, and then you see several other things about that. And again, I like Trump, but I probably only agree with him maybe 50-60% of the time. So I don't like everything he did, but I can still recognize when there's an agenda out against this person, and whether or not it means he's good or bad guy, I don't know, but. We see a lot of things that are blatantly untrue, and it's good examples for how the press can omit things and still pretend to tell the truth.
Do you think we do, like, I was trying to think of a scenario. Like, I had two directions I could go with it, and I'm gonna go in the other one just because it makes the most sense. Like, do you think people on the
Yeah,
right do
absolutely.
that too, though? Because like the same way as like it's not enough for us to disagree with Trump on all levels, we also have to have him. He's also raping women or something crazy. Like, it's the same way with like it can't be that Hillary is the ultimate politician, just scummy in every way. We also have to believe that there's a video circulating the dark web of her cutting a child's face off
Right.
and wearing it like a mask.
Yeah, that's out there too, for
I'm
sure.
saying, like, is it?
No.
I've
I
never
don't
seen
mean the
it.
video.
You
I
see what
just
I'm
mean the talk out there.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, but you know how many times
Yeah.
I've heard people say that? The video of Hillary Clinton, it's like
It's been rumored, but nobody's ever actually
have you
seen
seen
it. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So like, it's not
But
enough
I guess
for us
the
to believe. I
difference
mean,
is
there's plenty of
that's
reasons.
people in 8chan, and that's people in conspiracy forum on Reddit. That's Facebook groups. That's not the mainstream media actively trying to deceive you.
It is the mainstream media on level though, because dude, I've heard way older people that aren't nearly as connected, like Facebook surface level people that have told me about that Hillary Clinton thing. So that has spread like wildfire. Because what started to happen is, like, you get the people that are really deep down in the muck that do the research, and it comes and bubbles to the surface. And then now it's gotten to the point where you don't even have to have the internet to get these things because people are needing something to talk about. So they'll talk about the last dark
Yeah.
thing they saw on the web. Even people that you wouldn't think would know about these things now are now talking about some pretty coast to coast sort of
I
themes.
still say it's
on the
different though
darker
when you
side.
have the mainstream media who, most of America actually trusts, and most people, when you think of these things that you hear on the internet like this, most people actually don't believe that. So you do have, it does go around, and it does make.
Think most people believe crazy stuff? You don't think most people
I
believe the
think
crazy
a
stuff?
small portion of people believe each crazy thing. I don't think most people believe all the crazy things. No. Well,
Like what?
like that video you're
'Cause, like,
talking about, I think a small number of people actually are pushing that story that it is out there, but it is. I mean, it's relatively small. I'm not saying that she did or didn't do that, but
I'm believing, because I would say, like, just as we're going to say that, like, it's easy for us to believe that, okay, most people that hate Donald Trump, not just your average, not because there is no average, like most people that just dislike Donald Trump, it's
Yeah.
like visceral hate. they really believe that he probably at some point in time had a rape dungeon with all different races of women lined up for him to have his choosing for the night.
Except for
And if I
black.
put that on the
Except for
internet,
black.
there would be
He's a racist.
no, he especially black because he wanted to know what it was like to own
Okay.
slaves again, and because that's evil, you know what I'm saying? And they would want to believe that. They would believe it that it would get into the universe of Trump hating. It would be law. And I'm just saying, like, even though there is TDS and the people on the right or the people on the left are a bit crazier about it, I'd say there's more people out there than you would think that believe the crazier stuff
Unbelievable.
about Hillary because want to
No,
believe that
I
she's
think
that
there's
evil.
definitely
And
people
I'm
out
not
there, and
saying
there's definitely people who believe Hillary's that evil, but I don't see that being out there pushed in the mainstream like I do the stories about Trump. That's what I'm saying.
yeah. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, I really think at this point both sides have a lot more people that believe quote unquote conspiracy than the mainstream would like to believe, because nobody that you know except for maybe some of the older people and some just extremely normie people that watch any news channel and then just walk away
Well, you
going,
know,
yeah,
it's,
that happened. I mean, like, I don't know anybody that
you
watches
know, it's
the
funny
news
they call
anymore.
they had QAnon, who a lot of people on the right believed, and I followed some of that, and I thought it was pretty interesting stuff. But a lot of the people in the mainstream media, for example, are calling the Q people crazy conspiracy theorists and all this. But these guys have had an ongoing conspiracy theory where Trump was conspiring with Russia for 7 years, and there was all this. You know, it's all this stuff has come out that these people were lying, that they were making it up for political purposes, that they were manipulating the Trump campaign off from the beginning. But yet these people still believe all these stories that they see, that Trump is going to jail for Russian, whatever it is with the Russians. Yeah.
Any day.
And they've been going on. It's like this thing with Trump supposedly grabbing the steering wheel, like, oh, the walls are closing in on Trump again. And is that any crazier than I mean, is QAnon really any crazier than that? But the thing is, that's being amplified by people like Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow, and even CBS and NBC News. They're pushing those things out there, and they know that it's all come out that it's not true, but they're still pushing it, and they knew all along, most of it, I would think, because they saw it was just coming through the news. And that was what the CIA was basing their stories on, but was that they planted, or that the FBI was basing their warrants on, was that they planted these stories in the news, and then they used the news report as proof that there was something going on. So anyway, and they still won't go up the Russia thing. Yeah, you're right about that, Sean. But anyway, anything else you want to say on it, Tim, before I show my little meme here about Woodrow Wilson?
No, one thing just to kind of prove the idea that people believe whatever they want to, or they never even fact check anything. I still see people post things about how Trump was never going to get his wall. And it's like, first of all, he's not even in office anymore, and I don't know how people.
They built a wall, a freaking wall.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it may not be completely across, but there's a big ass wall down there. And you still see people saying, "Ha ha, he never got his wall." It's like, well, he got about 3/4
Well,
of
I
it.
remember in the 2020 election campaign, there was a video from CBS, and they actually went out to the wall, and they were talking to some people who were like, "Hey, we thought this wasn't happening, and they're actually building all this, and like we weren't even ready." There was the people who apparently lived there, because the news had told them that the wall wasn't being built, and everybody was making fun of Trump for not building the wall. And the next thing they know, here comes the wall. But
yeah, I mean, there's a piece of a wall there. I mean, it's just crazy that people still laugh and say he never got his wall. And it's like, I don't know, there's quite a bit of wall down there. If you look at the pictures of it, they did quite a bit of work.
Well,
but Obama had the cages, but that was Republicans' fault. And now we've had Roe v. Wade reversed under a Democrat's watch. But everything makes perfect sense. White men are being blamed for the reversal, even though it was a woman and a black dude that was on partner through with three of the white dudes. I don't even know what the other ones were. What were the three people that didn't vote? Were they white
the
dudes?
ones that voted against it were
white women?
Sotomayor, Kagan, and what's his name? Is it Stephen or Breyer? I think I can't remember which one's still on there. One retired last year, one's retiring this year. But
those people literally don't exist if you don't tell me their sex, their race, and their
Sotomayor
gender.
is a Latino or Latina woman. What's her name? Elena Kagan is, I don't know, she's a woman of color. And then Justice Stevens is a white man, or Breyer. I can't remember which one is left on there.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. My only point was,
It's
it's
not.
actually I really don't have
Well,
one. It's kind of funny. And white dude. It's like
it's
a
easy.
woman
It's
and a
easy
black
to
dude
blame it
there,
on
too.
white men, but ultimately, I don't know how you can get too upset about it, because the Supreme Court is saying what they're ultimately saying is, we don't have the authority to tell you whether or not you can have abortions. I think that's a good thing for the Supreme Court to say that. So, whether or not Tennessee will actually be doing a trigger law that they passed, I think it was in 2018, that if Roe versus Wade ever is repealed, that they would immediately go to a 6-week abortion ban, which is kind of hard to, yeah.
Why make that law if you didn't think it was possible in the
Well, I guess they
future
did
for it
think
to
it was
happen?
possible, and that was why they made it.
Like, I hate to like get all crazy conspiratorial about it, but like, do you think it's possible that 5 people might have got a little something under the table to all suddenly go after Roe v. Wade under a
Sotomayor,
Democrat rule?
yeah, I'm sorry,
Do you
yeah,
think
you're probably right.
Yeah.
Sotomayor probably is Hawaiian, yeah. I don't know.
It's why
she's just a lady.
you
Do what?
So
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying? Like, maybe these people got a little something under the table. It's just really peculiar timing
Maybe. I mean,
for the justices. They go
I mean,
after
it's consistent with
Or is
their
it-
other positions. So, I mean, a lot of people are saying that.
Wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't they have done it 3 years
because
ago?
they just got the case that, and they also they just got the case that allowed them to revisit it. Really, was these cases that they have to work their way through the federal court system, the state, and then the federal court system before they actually get to the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court has to decide to hear it. So at one point, I think the Chief Justice decides whether or not they hear the case, and if it's unlikely to change settled law, then they are unlikely to bother to hear it, right? So ultimately, I think it comes down to they were waiting until they had enough conservative justices on the court to even hear the case, because if they didn't have enough conservative justices on the court to overturn it, then there was really no point in hearing the case. See what I mean?
Sounds
Yeah,
like it's
could be.
aliens.
Lizard aliens. Hey, we need to have Jonathan back on and get into.
I actually have a segment called "Proving That They May Be Aliens"
Okay.
that I'd like to start soon. I've got one video made for you so far, just little anecdotal pieces showing that it really is more of a comical piece, and it won't be the first time people have done this kind of thing. But like, it's more just to show you that the people up top, and they might not be lizards, but they don't behave correctly.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Even like their mannerisms, down to the Zuckerberg
Mhm.
drink. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure everybody knows what the Zuckerberg sip is. You can find so many more of just finding elite people just doing everyday things like shopping and stuff, and they do just really weird things while they're shopping.
Yeah, and
wanna
that's
show
why it makes
people.
that video. I'm sure you've seen the video of, it's a wax figure, or animatronic wax figure of Prince Harry and what's her name? What's his wife's name? Meghan Markle. And they're standing there with Princess Kate and Prince William, and they're all waving to the crowd and stuff, and they look like robots, and people sharing it around as proof. Like, they literally are robots. They're animatronic wax figures. So you're sharing this around like, these people look crazy, man. There's something weird going on here. It's like, no, you're literally sharing pictures of the robots. But Sean says, "Where's Dustin?" Dustin works early in he works at 5 a.m. through the week, so it's hard for him to make it on the Wednesday night, but he's off Sunday and on Monday and Tuesday, so he's able to join us on Sunday. Oh, but yeah, Dustin wasn't here this past week either. That's right. Yeah, he has a live show with his synth project, and most of that project for him has been writing and recording. So they've got to do extra work on their setup to make sure that they can perform the songs live with Ether Weaver. So that's AETHERWEAVER, if you want to check them out. I'm pretty sure they have, I can't remember if it's Bandcamp or SoundCloud or what it is, but you can find them pretty easy if you search that.
I think they're on everything. I think they use this like nowadays. If you sign up through like CD Baby or whatever, it basically puts it on everything now.
DistroKid's the way to go. It's $20 a year. I mean,
made it cheap enough to where, and if you don't go through that stuff, it really is a pain in the butt to go through individually and upload one thing at a time when you can just pay a fee and have them do all 900 million streaming services for you.
Spill the tea all over me says her eyes never closed. What were we talking about?
Talking about
Meghan Markle. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. And she does look creepy. Yeah. But that's animatronic. It was a wax museum. So, yeah, she absolutely looked creepy. If that was the real woman, I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with that lady?
I'll bring you some videos. That's one of my favorite pastimes is finding lizard people in the
water
wild.
Spill the tea all over me.
That they call them glitching, but before people were glitching, it was like their lizard behavior, like because the people like even David Icke would say that they don't. It's like they're in a matrix and they're shape shifting in the matrix or whatever because it's more like.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some videos that are creepy of this stuff, and the point that when David Icke actually explains, okay, first of all, the thing of the shape shifting. This is what people were telling to him, so he was reporting what people were telling to him initially, right? He said after he had his freak out moment on public TV over there in England, that people started bringing him these stories about lizard people and all this stuff. You were thinking moonshine, LOL. Well, that's what a lot of people think. But
he's just one of those. We're just real hillbillies. We even keep our water in jars.
But the David Icke thing, he brought these stories to people who claimed that they had seen things like lizard people and the royal family being lizard and stuff. And there's actually used to be a video that you could find on YouTube of a naked man jumping out of Buckingham Palace and running away. But there were lots of things like that. But anyway, the whole thing of why he was saying, in his opinion, that these people were seeing lizards or whatever it was, is that you're not actually seeing a physical thing. You're seeing an energetic construct. I mean, your brain is an energetic construct interpreting information that comes towards it. So when someone is in a state of panic or, extreme fear, if they're being tortured by someone, they may perceive that person to be a reptile, because ultimately the physical matter that we made out of is just a representation of the energy that's there that our body can interpret through our brain and our five senses. So he's saying that when someone is acting in a manner that's consistent with how we perceive a lizard or a reptile to act, then that may be how we perceive that person. Because we're all just energy anyway.
You know about his
or their shape shifting fails.
What's the name?
So spill the tea all over me.
Yeah, that's what they believe. They think that's what he believes now, though. Like, because that may have been some of his earlier stuff, but later on down the line, he came out and started saying that there is a mothership or something way out there, or maybe it was I think it's Saturn was some of his latest work that I found was that Saturn is shooting a beam. The matrix signal at us, right? And then it hits our moon, and our moon acts as a resonating satellite dish to project our matrix onto our Earth, and that this is some sort of a simulation that we live in, kind of like they live, I guess. But he was saying the reason they can shapeshift so quickly is because that none of this is real anyway, right? But one of the celebrities that came out and said that lizard people, that he had physically seen a lizard shapeshifter was Billy Corgan.
No, I didn't know that.
Like you can find a video of him saying that he saw a person physically shift into a lizard creature at some point. So
interesting.
He said that. And there was a couple other people you can find that say they saw people turn into reptilians and stuff like that. I'm not saying I believe
it's one of those things that's out there. I mean, there are some creepy, compelling videos. I haven't looked for them in years. That are probably a lot of them, if they're real, have been removed. But hey, let's real quick before we finish out, because this Wednesday or
lizard people that live in the hollow earth.
You gotta watch out for them.
Would you tell the moth that you had a web?
If I was a spider, would I tell the moth that I have a web? No, probably not.
So if I was a lizard person that was vampire, going back to episode
Nibbling on
several
us.
episodes, I wouldn't let humans know I was alive. I would let them
Yeah.
think I was a human, and meanwhile I would lizard bite them from behind.
Catch them in the
So
World
there you
Wide
go.
Web.
I'll bring you
All
over the
right.
story.
Well, hey, I think this Sunday we're going to talk about the Federal Reserve, that evil creature from Jekyll Island. Is it? Or is it a necessity for America? I don't know. I have my own opinions. I'm sure you have yours. But let's have this quick tweet here from Peter Schiff. Since Princeton University is removing Woodrow Wilson's name from its buildings due to his racist thinking and policies, I think we should also repeal the federal income tax and the Federal Reserve, as both acts were signed into law by Woodrow Wilson. Letting either law stand is racist. I'm right there with you. Don't want to be racist, do we there, Peter? So, if you don't know the story of the creature of Jekyll Island, we will get into that a little bit. There's a fascinating book by G. Edward Griffin, and he does a video presentation of it too. It's kind of older, but if you want to learn about the Federal Reserve, the book is really long. You probably won't have time to read it. It's like 1,000 pages before we talk about it, but you would have time to watch the movie. It was on YouTube. Let's say it is. Jimmy says, remind me to tell you about my brother describing the TR-3B to me as far back into the 80s. Yeah, I've heard about that too from your brother. Yeah, Spill the Tea all over me says, I don't remember who they were talking about now.
Sean was asking. He says, "Who Billy Corgan?" It's a Billy Corgan, Corgin. He's the singer. Well, he is the Smashing Pumpkins, but he was the singer for the Smashing Pumpkins. He claims that he has seen reptilians, but you could probably find that video pretty easy if you look. Just type
Might
it
not
into
find it on YouTube, but you might find it on Daily Motion or E-Bombs World if those places are still around.
I'm pretty sure E-Bombs World's still around. It's just not near as
Yeah.
shocking as it used to be. Nothing really,
Yeah.
you know.
But it's good to have you with us tonight. We appreciate it. Again, if you hang out with us this long, we'd appreciate a like on the video. It really does help people drive. It really does help drive people to the video. And if you share it around to somebody else you think might enjoy it, we'd appreciate that too. Hit the notification bell so you know when we're live. And we will see you this Sunday. Let's get into some Federal Reserve talk. We'd like to have you back. Thanks. Bye. Spill the Tea all over me says enjoy, folks. And Sean says couldn't spell his name. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all your comments. Have a good day.